Okay, so with this video, what I'm trying to show you is a series of stability-based drills that I like to look at and test both people, general fitness in the gym, as well as athletes, to really tell if we have the stiffness and the stability to do a lot of the exercises that we see in the gym. Now, a lot of people today really talk about mobility and flexibility, which is huge, but part of that is only half the equation. Being able to be flexible and mobile is key to being healthy. However, one thing that people don't realize is flexibility is great. It's our ability to move through a range of motion. So the FMS that I covered in another video is great to show if we have mobility in certain areas and also some of these stability drills that we're going to look at. But that's only part of the equation. If I have somebody who's extremely flexible, but they can't control, they don't have the stability through this range of motion, and they can't create mobility and control where they're moving, that's how we have things like tears and strains. Because what's happening is this individual is pushed to a position where their limb, their muscle can get that position. However, they're not strong there. So if I have somebody, for instance, who's doing burpees or box jumps, and they're going to do a push-up, like a plow push-up or a med ball throw, and at this very end range of motion, they don't have a lot of strength here. That's how we end up with, for instance, strains or like rotator cuff tears. If I'm doing box jumps and I have somebody who's really stiff in the back of the legs, lower legs, and they're jumping up and down, well, when they jump up, if they go to jump down and they don't have the mobility to land and stabilize this position, if they're too tight, then we can cause a strain somewhere, anywhere in the back side of the body there, just for examples. So these movements I like to look at when I am working with somebody in the gym. You guys can try them on your own to see if you're ready to go as far as stability goes. Again, as opposed to mobility, that was covered a lot in the functional movement screen in another video. So what I like to start off with is a relatively simple one, and it's as simple as a push-up. However, what we're checking is, do we have strength when the leg is completely locked along this position? So for instance, if we're coming out of a squat or coming out of a step-up. So simple enough, we hold here, then we just pick the leg up. Right, we make sure we're flat, we're not twisting, we don't sag. So we can do that with both legs. And again, we're checking if, in this long position here, can we hold tension through the front of the hip and through the front of the quad and our abdomen. If we want to go a little longer, we can test that same muscle, but now we're going to move this leg back and we're going to hold a lunge. Right here, we like to hold hands in the back of the head and we're tall. So we create this straight line. This back leg here is as long as possible, and I'm really putting it at length to see again. That's a really big range of motion. I can get the leg back there, and a lot of people can get into a lunge, but can they hold it? Do these deep, long muscles of the hip flexor and the knee flexors, extensors, can they have the endurance to hold that position? Because if we have the endurance, it's a sign that we at least have the strength to start to load that pattern heavier with like lunges and squats. So similarly for the legs, we have both the front side. So if we're looking at the back side, we have what's called a single leg RDL, which is pretty common in the gym. However we come, we call it an inverted T. Our arms are out, and we hold. This toe is flexed, slight bend, hips are flat, with the shoulders flat. That's going to test, one, can these deep stabilizers of our hip, as well as the big muscles in the backside of the leg, at the end range of motion again, hold us in that position. Do we have the endurance to at least hold a safe pattern before we start loading? All right? So if we're working with our legs still, another huge one is these side muscles I was talking about. All right? They're called our abductors, huge for like lateral movements, but also stabilizing our hips, working side to side. In the FMS, we're talking about a hurdle step. Now the hips might have a tendency to move or tilt. This is a great drill to help work on that. So what we do, we come here from the elbow, we come up, and we lift this leg. So what we're seeing is, do these bottom muscles on the right side of my body have stability to really hold this position for an extended period of time? So those are some of the stability drills I like to see from the hip, the knee flexors, and the hip flexors and extensors to see if somebody has the endurance, the stability, and those end ranges of motion, and they're mobile enough, but stable enough to start loading patterns heavy. Now working on to the upper body, we have a series of drills as well. Going back to the push-up position, we're going to check, can our shoulder hold our shoulder rotator cuff tight to our body in a push-up? So we're here, I hold tight, I pick one arm up. My hips are flat, my shoulders stay flat. All right, right there. We don't let this hip come up, and we don't let our hips drop. Those are usually signs of compensation. Someone can't pack and hold that shoulder in tight, again, for an extended period of time. From there, we're also looking at, can we hold from a side position? So we go to that side plank again, however this time, we're up top. Right there. In this position, my shoulders are shrugged backwards and down. I'm not resting with my shoulder coming up to my ear. I pull it away, and I hold this big T position in a straight line from the top to the bottom. So that's going to check if now some of those back muscles on the shoulder can really hold in a good position. Think of things like push-ups, pull-ups, rows. Are those muscles strong enough so that we can load those patterns? Another one, and this is where usually a lot of folks nowadays, because of desk posture or from driving extended periods of time, these muscles in the back of the shoulder get really weak. So what we do is we take usually about 3 to 5 pound weights, we bring ourselves to the ground, and we hold in a W position. The goal being to hold this elbow lower than the hand, and again, about 45 degrees angles at the elbow and the shoulder, because we're trying to put all the strain on the back of that rotator cuff. It's usually a highly injured muscle, right, when we talk about rotator cuff tears. So this is a great way to see that some of these rotator cuffs specifically have the capacity to load things like pull-ups, kipping pull-ups, push presses, bench presses. So we're on the floor, we hold our weights, our elbows are down, and our hands are up. We can't lift like this and post our head on the ground, and we don't want to lift our legs up and use our lower back. We're here, elbows down, with the thumbs up. All right, the last two, these are a little bit more for the core, both the front and the back. First one many folks have done, it's going plank. Now when we do this to check our core, we want to make sure that both hands are not joined together and we're using this front line of our musculature in our arms. So what we do is we hold neutral position, we dig our toes in the ground, and we pull tight. Our butt is tucked, so we're making this flat position with our back. We're not up in the air, and we're not extending and flexing our lower back like this with our butt up. We hold tight, and we squeeze the quads, the butt, and we pull our elbows down hard towards our legs so we keep tension through the front line of our body. The last stability assessment I like to do with folks is a reverse plank. So this checks, do we have the flexibility but also the stability in the backside of the shoulder to hold, and also our legs, our butt, and the back muscles. Those small back muscles and the back muscles of the legs get overstretched, again, from sitting for extended periods of time throughout the day. So this one's actually pretty tough. We come here, we go from the hands, our toes are flexed up, and we lift in this position. Here, the back side of my body is squeezed as tight as it can while we're at length, and I'm really opening up the chest while I'm pulling those shoulder blades back to hold this reverse plank position. Again, does the back side of our body, do all those muscles in unison have the ability to hold tension and stay stable? Because remember, we can have flexibility, but we want the stability to be mobile and ranges of motion so that when we load patterns like deadlifts or squats, we're doing it to tissue that has the capability of loading us safely. What a lot of people make the mistake of doing is loading certain patterns without being able to test, yeah, I have the endurance here and range of motion because I have strength really deep down in those hip stabilizers. Or I can hold here in the shoulder position, or in this shoulder position, because those deep rotator cuff muscles, the muscles that hold my shoulder blade to my body, are stable and strong. So I'm loading my push-ups, I'm loading my presses. I know that person's probably not going to hurt themselves because those deep stabilizers muscles are controlling the range of motion and mobility. So go through all these. As a standard, we're looking for at least 30 to 45 seconds on all of these. And if you were to just go through each one, that alone is probably a good workout for most folks. I'll do them before I do my workouts and it gets me sweating. So challenge yourselves, go through these stability assessments, and see if you really have true strength to own your range of motion so you can be safe in the gym and progress successfully.